Step 39, Embryo Incubation. I will explain you what happens in the lab after you have egg collection until you transfer embryo or freeze the embryos. Let us say you had egg collection on Monday morning, which is day 0. First thing the embryologist will do is insemination of your eggs. If you're doing IVF, all your eggs will be left with millions of sperm for fertilization overnight. If you're doing ICSI, then your eggs will be checked for the maturity, and all mature eggs will be inseminated with a sperm, one sperm for each egg. Then all immature eggs will be discarded, and then there's all this inseminated eggs will be left in the incubator to check for fertilization next morning. So next morning, Tuesday morning, the embryologist checks for fertilization. Whether you're doing ICSI or IVF, same time they check for fertilization, and they really want to see a zygote, which means you have a one cell, egg cell, with a 2 nucleus. It's called 2PN. So you really want to get 2PN eggs or zygotes on the first day. And all 2PNs will be put in the incubator for growth, and all other immature eggs or abnormal fertilized or degenerated eggs will be discarded that day. Next day, Wednesday morning, which is day 2, embryos should have 2 to 4 cells. And normally you don't do transfer on day 2, and you should not really disturb the embryos that day. Next day, which is a Thursday morning, so it's day 3, embryos should have 8 to 10 cells, and you can transfer embryos on day 3. Generally it's not recommended, but you can. And you can assess embryo quality. Generally, again, it's not recommended because you should not disturb the embryos. The next day, day 4, which is Friday, is a more or less stage of development. You cannot assess embryos, you cannot transfer embryos on day 4 because you can't tell which embryos of better quality than others. And you don't disturb embryos on day 4. Then day 5, which is Saturday, you should have a blastocyst embryos. Embryos should be blastocyst with 2 cell lines. One is surrounding cells called trophectoderm, which is placental cells, and then inner cell mass, which is embryonic cells. And on that day, you assess embryo quality. If you're doing fresh embryo transfer, you can transfer one healthy embryo. All other high-grade embryos you can freeze that day. Then all remaining embryos will be left in the incubator for further growth, which is on day 6, which is on Sunday. If embryo improved overnight and become high grade, then you can freeze some of these embryos, and all poor grade embryos need to be discarded that day. Essentially, this is how embryos develop from single egg cell to approximately 120 blastocyst embryos. Generally, it's recommended you do single stage growth, which means you leave all the fertilized embryos in the incubator. You don't disturb until day 5 and open on day 5. Then select one healthy embryo if you're doing fresh transfer and freeze all the embryos. If you're doing freeze all, you can freeze all healthy embryos on day 5 and leave all the embryos till day 6. If they improve, you can freeze healthy embryos, and on all unhealthy embryos you discard on day 6. This is embryo development for the first 6 days after the egg collection.